I went to India to see the Hill of Miracles, the hill with the tamarind tree on which for years apples, pears, grapes, figs, apricots, and many other fruits grew. And I found the extraordinary story of the boy who could work miracles. This boy, Satya Sai Baba, we are told by the Icelandic researcher Erlendur Haraldsson, created fruit at a distance. These fruits appeared on the tamarind tree at the top of the hill. This expanse of sand is the river Chitravati, which is almost dry and runs for most of the year underground. And it was on the banks of this river, still according to Haraldsson, that the boy used to come with his first followers, to disappear and reappear beside the tree in a dazzling light similar to the sun. On the banks of this river stands Puttaparthi, the village where he was born. Many visitors of Christian faith claim it reminds them of Bethlehem. Om Sri Sai Mahimatmane Namaha. Om Sri Sai Maheshwara Sarupaya Namaha. Om Sri Sai. Sathya Sai Baba was born in his house on the 23rd of November 1926, and these were his parents. The Nadi, the ancient astrological texts of the lives and deaths of great men which predicted the coming of Buddha and other great teachers, also foresaw the birth of Satya Sai Baba. This boy, who is now over 60 and still today continues to produce the most astonishing happenings.
Anna-Mette Hansen, social worker, lives with her two sons in Langerot in Denmark. She was the subject of a recent major program on Danish television. She met Baba and carries the tangible signs of an extraordinary experience.
About 4 years ago, I was told I had cancer of the thyroid gland. I was operated, and my thyroid itself and most of the surrounding subsidiary glands were removed. I then had to undergo supplementary treatment based on radioactive iodine, because not all of the malignant cells had been removed. This treatment took place at the Finsen Institute. Following this, I had a tack test and a series of blood tests to check the efficacy of the treatment. After the third round of treatment, they told me it wasn't enough and that I would have to undergo more treatment. After some time, they discovered metastases in my lungs, and the doctors were not able to tell me how many more times I would have to be treated. At the beginning of my disease, some friends had mentioned an Indian called Sai Baba, who was famous for his many strange, almost miraculous healings. I refused to think about this because at the time I was concentrating on the operation, and I didn't have the strength to think of anything else, to wonder who this extraordinary man was, and least of all to plan a journey to India. After the 5th series of treatments, feeling that they had only helped slightly, I decided that if this was not to be my final treatment, I would go to India. Unfortunately, the last treatments had had no effect. That was when I decided to leave for India. And so I arrived in Sai Baba's little village in the south of India. During the first few days, I spent my time wandering around the streets of the town, trying to absorb its atmosphere and to understand everything that was going on there.
Der kommer jeg i kontakt med en ældre dame, som har været læge tidligere.
Until one day I met an old Indian lady, she used to be a doctor, who after hearing my story advised me to write to Sai Baba, asking him for his help. So I wrote my letter and tried to give it to him. This is possible twice a day, when everyone gathers in front of his house. It's then that you have the opportunity to hand him your message. Every day I was in India, I saw Sai Baba materializing the so-called vibhuti. He says that the vibhuti has a great healing effect. I once even saw him materialize a necklace for a lady.
Sai Baba fortæller selv, at han er avatar. Det vil sige en...
Sai Baba calls himself an avatar, a divine incarnation.
Han overså så mit brev fuldstændig i 3-4 dage. Og da de dage så var gået, så tænkte jeg nok...
For the first 3 or 4 days, he completely ignored my letter, and I finally decided that this obviously was not the way to communicate with him, so I stopped carrying the letter around with me.
Sai Baba selv anser ikke sine mirakler og sine...
Sai Baba does not give his healing miracles much importance. He simply sees them as a way to attract interest. His real message, he says, is love.
Der løb noget ud af min næse. Jeg stod op for at undersøge, hvad det var. Jeg tænkte, det var da mærkeligt. Jeg var meget forundret over, hvad det kunne være.
After 2 weeks there, I woke up in the middle of the night and noticed that some kind of liquid was running out of my nose. I got up to see what it was.
Det så ud til at være vand, der løb ud af næsen på mig. Og jeg var heller ikke forkølet, så det var heller ikke det, der var...
It wasn't blood, as I had supposed, but simply a clear liquid.
En halv times tid. Sådan forholdsvis kraftigt. Og jeg gik så tilbage til min madras og satte...
It went on flowing quite hard, so I went back to my mattress and waited for it to stop. I wasn't worried about it, but I wondered what it could be. After about half an hour, the liquid stopped flowing, and I went back to sleep. The day after, as soon as I arrived in the temple, I took my place in the courtyard. Sai Baba came out as he had done every day and stopped right in front of me. I was sitting in the 5th or 6th row. The more he looked at me, the stronger I felt an inexplicable contact with him. He looked me straight in the eye. There was unbelievable power in that gaze filled with love. And I felt that something was genuinely happening inside me, something which I couldn't describe clearly. The following night, when I was once again awakened by the liquid flowing from my nose, I was no longer very surprised. I got up anyhow, just to look into the mirror and make sure. Then I went back to bed and waited for the liquid to stop. The following morning, I woke up convinced that a form of healing had taken place. I tried many times and in many different ways to contact Sai Baba to find out whether I was healed or not, but it was not possible.
Derfor gjorde jeg det en morgen kort inden min afrejse fra ashrammen, at jeg bad en bøn til ham, hvor jeg bad ham om, hvis han havde gjort mig rask.
Just before I returned to Europe, I turned my thoughts to him in the form of a fervent prayer, asking him, if he had healed me, to let me know during the morning darshan by touching his right ear with his right hand as he passed in front of me. This sign would give me the certainty that I had been healed. Then I went to the temple.
Og den morgen snakkede han meget livligt med en af sine skoleklasser, der var.
That morning, Sai Baba spent a long time talking to one of his classes, and I was so absorbed watching their discussion that when he passed in front of me, holding his right ear with his right hand, I was astonished, completely forgetting that I myself had asked him to do this for me in my prayer.
Og jeg havde faktisk fuldstændig glemt, at jeg havde bedt ham om at gøre det.
I was ashamed that I had been able to forget something so important for me.
Rystet over, at jeg overhovedet kunne glemme noget, der var så vigtigt for.
Having understood the meaning of that gesture, I was flooded by a feeling of immense joy,
Så blev jeg utrolig glad over, at han
and I hurried to tell the other Danes about the extraordinary thing which had happened to me.
mig at fortælle de andre danskere, som jeg var sammen med dernede, hvad jeg havde oplevet.
And so I left India in a state of great joy at the thought of going home and telling my family that I had been healed. I had arranged with the Finsen Institute that the treatment with the radioactive iodine was to continue when I returned. But now I considered myself healed, and I would have preferred to have simply undergone tests rather than to continue with the treatment. Unfortunately, this proved impossible, even though the tests showed that the activity of the disease had sunk to a very low level, to 300 units to be precise. Before I left for India, this activity was somewhere above 2,100 units, while the 300 units which were active on my return was an altogether normal value. And so I had another round of radioactive iodine treatment, against my will. But it was the last, because the doctors told me that further rounds of treatment would be unnecessary. One doctor I knew ironically added that they would have listened to my story if the disease had returned.
For the last 30 years, during the festival of Shivarati, a festival held in honor of Shiva on a night with a new moon between February and March, Sai Baba has regularly produced a series of miracles. One of these miracles consists of the materializing of vibhuti, the holy ash, making it pour out of a vase until it completely covers a statue of Shirdi Baba, the great Muslim teacher, whom he sees as his previous incarnation. Shirdi Baba, who today still has millions of followers, arrived in the village of Shirdi in 1854 and died there in 1918. He advocated a most unusual kind of eclecticism in India. He was Muslim, yet sang verses of the Veda, Hindu texts, and he welcomed members of both religions, which created a great scandal. Far more ash pours from the vase than could possibly have been inside. It stops flowing when he stops moving his hand or removes it to insert the other. It's interesting to notice how he produces more vibhuti with his right hand than with his left. What does Baba have to say about his miracles? How does he see them? They're my credentials, he says. By this he means that the Leela, miracles in Sanskrit, are divine action whose purpose is to surprise and to make people think, to deepen their perception, to lead them in their spiritual research. Dr. S. Bhagavantam, Indian nuclear physicist, Vice-Chancellor of the Osmania University in Hyderabad, ex-director of the Indian Science Institute, ex-scientific advisor of the Indian Ministry of Defense, ex-president of the Committee of Science and Technology for Developing Countries.
Oh, at the beginning, Baba himself knew that I was a part skeptic. I was a scientist. I was asking many questions. I met Baba more than 20 years ago at a time when I was at the height of my scientific career and scientific achievement. Naturally, Baba knew that I was questioning and I was asking myself, what is all this? How does he do it? And in those days, there were not so many people coming round Baba. It was easy to get near him. The first time I came to this ashram, perhaps in the whole ashram there were only 100 people. And today you will find a few thousand people. So Baba was very kind to take me near him, and he did so many miracles that miracle after miracle began to be shown to me, and I started asking myself, either I find a scientific explanation for these miracles, or I give up and say, this is impossible to find scientific explanation, and Baba is divine and is beyond science, and I accept it as a matter of fact. So, in the beginning, when he started manifesting material, the first shock which I had was when he produced a printed text of an Indian scripture by name Bhagavad Gita, when we were sitting on the sands of the river Chitravati, which is close by to the ashram. Sometime in the evening, we went on the riverbed, he took me, and we sat on the riverbed, and he made me talk about science and about the great American scientist Oppenheimer, who discovered the first nuclear weapon, nuclear bomb. And while talking, somehow I brought into the conversation the Indian scripture, Bhagavad Gita, from which Oppenheimer is said to have quoted a verse at the time when the first explosion took place in New Mexico. Then Bhagavan said, will you have a text of Bhagavad Gita from me? I said, of course, I shall be delighted to have one. He took a handful of sand from the riverbed. He asked me to hold out my own hand, and he put the sand into my hand. And lo and behold, the sand turned into a printed text of Bhagavad Gita. This was the first shocking miracle, if I may use that word, which I saw. And very nearly that was the turning point, because it was impossible for me to find an explanation for what I had seen with my own eyes. I came to the conclusion that Baba's miracles are beyond science. Science cannot explain Baba's miracles in the language in which it is used to, and I must accept him as divinity who is quite above and beyond scientific explanations and scientific logic.
Following this interview, Bhagavantam, but only after we insisted, shows what he has perhaps never shown before, the famous Bhagavad Gita, which Sai Baba materialized for him on the banks of the river Chitravati. Dr. Samuel H. Sandweiss, American psychiatrist, assistant professor at the University of San Diego, California.
I had been treating a young lady for about 5 years. She had a periodic, very severe pain syndrome where her body would become paralyzed, her face would become, one side of the face would become paralyzed, she would become terribly depressed, suicidal, and extremely excruciating pain. She would have seizures. And many of the best neurosurgeons, neurologists couldn't understand what this was. Finally, she had sophisticated brain x-rays and had a brain biopsy. They actually opened up the skull and took a piece of brain. And still, the diagnosis was questionable. Just a month before we came to Baba for this wonderful World Conference, she called and said she was getting another pain problem. The only way that we've been able to treat this was to give high dosages of sedation so that she sleeps for a day or two and then recovers. She said that she was going to sleep the night before. Well, first she came into the office, my small little psychiatry office. I'm sitting in one chair and she's sitting in the other with a friend that has helped take her in because she was struggling. She could hardly move one side of her body. And although her face was paralyzed, she began to speak before she was even asking for medication. She said, last night, I was getting the headache, and the paralysis was starting. And I was about to drop off to sleep when I felt a hand on my forehead and on my stomach. And I realized that I was with somebody. Now, this doesn't happen to me much, she says. This doesn't happen to me. This is the first time this has ever happened. And I began to realize it was Sai Baba. He had such sweet hands. His voice was high and so sweet and soothing. And I could hear chanting in the background. She said that Baba first was very soothing and said, this is why you're having this illness in this lifetime. The doctors have difficulty understanding, but this has something to do with previous lifetimes, and that you have to go through the suffering this lifetime. But I will come to give you, to soothe you, to comfort you in times of pain, to give you this strength to go through. And then she said, he began telling her that next month there's going to be a great event happening in India. She didn't know this. And she said people from all over the world would come. And as she started to tell me the experience, even though her face was paralyzed and she was in terrible pain, she began to smile. And she said, oh, it's going to be so lovely. It's going to be so lovely. And Baba is going to invite so many people, and he's going to do a major event. He will begin to be known around the world. He's so great. And she said, I was so filled with his love, I asked, who are you? Who are you? And he said, with compassion, he said, I'm your father. And she said, I knew he didn't mean the earthly father. Then she said that he mentioned some things about me and my life, which she had no way of knowing and which were true. He talked to her with Sanskrit words that I knew, that she didn't know, and had deep, deep meaning. And then she said that Baba told her that he was going to come to the U.S. and that he wanted her to visit, to come and see him, but that she would have some difficulty, obstacles from the mother and from the boyfriend who would not be able to understand well. Then she said, she went to sleep, and in the morning she said, Doctor, what is this? And she pulled out her purse. Well, we opened the purse, and inside, in one of these little plastic compartments that one puts cards in, she had a little picture of Sai Baba that somebody else had given her. I hadn't given her this picture. And it was just coming, the vibhuti was just coming all over the purse, smelling so beautiful. And here we were in this little office. She was telling me about the World Conference. She was smiling in ecstasy while she was in terrible pain, and we were sharing vibhuti together. A very unusual experience for a Western doctor. Well, we gave her medication, and she went back home. 3-4 days later, her man friend, 35 years old, calls and said, I am a very strong, traditional Italian Catholic, and very strong feelings about Jesus. But I'm a very practical man. And it was one thing seeing this ash come out of my lady friend's picture. But last night, I had a cross that has been handed down through the generations to the family. And my cross on my table began to materialize this ash. What is this ash? And he began to soften. Well, this man and this lady came to our house when we had an open meeting. There were maybe 80 students from different colleges around, and told in such an innocent, sweet way about the miracle that took place for all of us. It was a matter of consolation and comfort for her. It was exhilarating, tremendously exhilarating to feel Baba's omnipresence and his working in this way for me. For all the devotees, it was so lovely. And it was a wonderful little announcement of the greatness that was going to happen during the World Conference. Wonderful event.
N. Kasturi, humorist, author, poet, translator, program producer of All India Radio, editor, professor of history, biographer of Sai Baba.
Vibhuti, in Sanskrit, it means glory, splendor. And it is an indication of the splendor of the Lord. Baba gives Vibhuti by a wave of his hand, creating it. That is to say, a part of himself, a part of his own splendor. You will see on my forehead I have got a big paste of Vibhuti, and Baba once called it a bandage. And I consider it a bandage which will save me from the illness of bondage. Because Baba always says, when he applies Vibhuti to your forehead, creating Vibhuti, he says, this is a reminder of death. This is a reminder of the triviality of things, of the impermanence of the cosmos. That is one meaning of Vibhuti which Baba gives. Another meaning of Vibhuti is that it is himself, a part of himself, because it emanates from him, and therefore it is divine, essentially. Another meaning that he gives is that it is the ultimate, the irreducible. You can't turn ash into something else. It is the ultimate. Once it has become ash, whatever you do with it, it will remain ash. And so it is the irreducible article. You can't proceed beyond that. It is the ultimate. That is the symbol of the ultimate.
A few hours by car from Bangalore on the road to Mysore stands Sai Baba's mandir, a little temple where some of his miracles are collected. These miracles are called living miracles because they take place continually. This photograph of Sai Baba produces vibhuti on its surface. When the vibhuti is removed, more forms in the space of a few hours. It's a photograph of the festival of Shivarati. During the festival, Baba, in addition to making vibhuti appear from the vase, creates in his mouth one or more lingams, egg-shaped objects of precious stone, a clearly painful procedure. This is one of these lingams and is also kept in the mandir. A little farther on, in a courtyard, are the stone feet of the Baba of Shirdi. These feet continually produce an oily, perfumed liquid known as amrita.
The miracles, like everything else, can help awaken this inner experience, which is a superconscious experience of ecstasy, of awe, of a deep penetrating look into what is, that humbles you, so that it's not like an everyday experience. It is an experience of a high state.
Since you have raised the question of science, I would first like to state that science has its limitations. Science is not omnipotent. Science cannot claim to explain and deal with everything in the creation. There are certain things which science can explain because science deals with material creation, matter. Science studies the properties of matter and of creation with the help of our 5 senses, the sense of vision, the sense of smell, the sense of touch, the sense of taste, and so on. Now, there are so many things in this world which are beyond these senses. Take, for example, love, or hate, or compassion, or love of a father to a son, liking, disliking. These things do not come under science. They cannot be measured with your eye, they cannot be sensed with your nose, they cannot be heard with your ear. So, science has its limitations. Miracles, which Baba does, quite in large number, which you may have seen, they do not lend themselves to treatment by the method and by the knowledge and by the logic which the scientist has developed essentially for studying the material world. The miracles are beyond the material world.
When I went to the director of the ashram and asked him for permission to film Baba, he answered that I would have to ask Baba himself. The following morning, I was surrounded by thousands of other people, each of whom had something to ask him. I had prepared the camera and was waiting for him to pass near me, hoping I would be able to speak to him. Suddenly, he was standing right in front of me and, I don't know how, asked his permission. He smiled and did not answer. I was confused and tremendously excited. I felt a tremendous power of light around him and myself, but I did not understand what was happening. I found myself with my hands full of vibhuti, which he had materialized. My neighbors, seeing that I did not react, took my hands and lifted them to my mouth. And then I tasted that delicate, fine perfumed ash. I understood that he had given his permission, so I made a sign to the cameraman to start filming. This materializing of Vibhuti is something that Sai Baba repeats many times during the darshan, the moment of meeting and prayer, which takes place once or twice a day. But he also does it in enclosed spaces amongst the passengers of the airliner, which often takes him from Bombay to Bangalore. Here, in the big courtyard, I have seen Baba create suites of various kinds and sizes, mainly for his pupils, and he does it with great enjoyment. In the past few years, however, it is rare that he materializes objects outdoors. And yet, once in the courtyard, during a normal darshan, I had the luck to see and film one of these materializations of metallic objects, which he was making for someone who was right there, close to my camera. It's shining there. A golden ring.
Son momentos de una alegría intensa para el recipiente o para cualquier.
So for anyone standing nearby who sees this extraordinary process. I know at least 2 explanations given by Baba for his creation of necklaces and rings, to show the futility of riches and to give the faithful something physical to guide his thoughts and to enable him to turn to Baba directly in a moment of need. The most up-to-date aspect of Baba's thoughts lies in this very idea of direct spiritual contact, eliminating any kind of representative or church. Often, after having created Vibhuti, he carefully wipes away any that remained. During the darshan, he chooses 10 to 20 people and invites them for an interview in a special room. It happened to us in the ashram of Whitefield in April. No one had been able to film an interview before. His right hand immediately made the classical movement of rotation, materializing a silver ring for a gentleman from Canada. The second interview in my life took place in Puttaparthi 4 months later. He immediately made vibhuti, which he then distributed. Sai Baba turned to an Indian lady who was sitting near the door. He asked her how she was, how her family were, and then asked her to give him the ring that he had made for her some time ago. It was a little ring made of gold with rubies in it. During the years she had it, it had lost 3 rubies. Baba blew onto the ring, once, twice, 3 times. Then he showed the ring. The rubies were back, and what is more, some of them had been replaced by 2 emeralds and some little diamonds. People react in different ways to Sai Baba. Everyone reacts to his or her own experience. This lady was very moved. She protested that it was too much of a present. "You deserve it," said Baba. "Keep up the good work." She kissed his feet where the Hindus believe is the point of highest energy of an avatar. Then he immediately took my silver ring with the enameled Jesus, which was squeezing my finger. He passed it to my neighbor to look at. And he asked him to put it onto the ring finger of my left hand, where I had always worn it. It went on with difficulty. Then Sai Baba took it from me again and showed it to the people who were there. He blew on it. And then slid it onto that same finger where it had been too tight before. The ring had grown larger. If anything, it was now too loose. I was worried that it could fall off my finger and that I might lose it. We had solved one problem, only to create another. So he took it off my left hand and put it onto my right, which is slightly larger and has wider fingers. The ring fitted perfectly onto my right hand ring finger. I thanked Sai Baba, and he just smiled. I clearly saw a blue aura coming from his hair.
Dr. V.K. Gokak, author, poet, professor, educator, ex-principal of the Central English Institute of Hyderabad, ex-vice-chancellor of the University of Bangalore, ex-director of the Indian Institute of Advanced Studies.
He has built quite a few hospitals because he wants to show that the service of the poor is the service of God, and India needs a number of such hospitals. He has also founded a number of schools and colleges because the new generation requires to be taught in a different way. He wants to give to the children what is called integral education. That is to say, to strengthen their will in the service of the divine and to sort of regulate it towards right conduct, to get them interested in an intensive pursuit of truth so that the intellect is fully and keenly employed in this investigation of truth, and then to arrive at a complete emotional equipoise where all the instinctive life is kept under perfect control and the emotions are purified so that in one's contemplation or meditation one can find God, and then in the release of one's own intuitions so that love wells up from the soul. Now these are the main things for which the new education, the Satya Sai education stands. There are thousands of children studying in the hundreds of Satya Sai Balavikas centers meant for the primary stage. And hundreds of them studying in the secondary schools and in the colleges affiliated to various universities in India. Especially in a college like Whitefield College near Bangalore and Anantapur College for women in Anantapur, there is an all India setup. Students come from all over India and join these two institutions so that there is a national clientele of students coming to these colleges. And this theory of education is being interpreted more and more. It needs to be implemented all over India if a new educational system has to come. In fact, Indian higher education, as well as primary and secondary, need to be overhauled completely.
Sai Baba says this about education. A truly good system teaches us universal peace, frees us from narrow-mindedness, and stimulates our ability to live together. This is a slow process, like the blooming of a flower. The perfume develops gradually and becomes clearer and stronger as it opens, petal after petal, like a coral. It must teach the student humility. Sai Baba defines his own system of education, which he calls Balvikas. It does not resemble any other educational system because it does not attempt to transfer information from one head to another, but from one heart to another. Sai Baba's Balvikas system would certainly be worth going into in more detail, but here we shall simply point out its existence and glance at certain truly original aspects. About prayer, Sai Baba says, we must teach children to pray not only for themselves, but for everybody. In this way, we avoid having each individual's life centered on himself, and so individuality becomes a form of mutuality and spreads through the entire village, the town, the country, the whole world. Sai Baba's Balvikas schools are all over India. There are also many schools and high schools specializing in art, the sciences, and economics, which are attached to various universities. In Bombay, for instance, there's the Satya Sai Baba Institute for Research and the Agricultural Institute. Sai Baba has built up many model hospitals in which different medicines are practiced, from homeopathy to traditional Western medicine, and from Ayurveda to acupuncture.
That very day, he came to the Gokulam, exactly as I had asked, without really being able to believe it. One day, to my surprise, Sai Baba sent someone to ask me what I still needed for my film. I was astonished and, without thinking about it, I said, one of his visits to the Gokulam, the model farm he has built up at Puttaparthi. Baba posed for various scenes of the film. He enjoyed playing the actor. I tried to understand what all this meant. A man like him, incredibly busy, a man who designs and builds schools all over India as well as farms and hospitals, a man who every day receives thousands of followers and puts them up for next to nothing with food and board. A man like this found time to grant a simple wish of mine. Sai Baba says, "Come, try me." But this time, I also understood the lesson quickly. Exactly such a man wanted to show his love, his availability to a man like me, eternally surrounded by things to do, who often fails to find time for certain things. In the meantime, the arati was taking place. Like camphor, it burns up entirely without leaving any residue. In the same way, the fire of devotion and passion burns without leaving traces of I, of the ego. This is what this ceremony means. The boy who could work miracles continued to surprise me, and these very surprises helped me to understand.
About religions, see, there is, I'm sure you have seen in Puttaparthi that beautiful column which is called the Dharma Stambha, the pillar of religions, which bears on its panels legends from all the religions, from Hinduism Christianity, Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, Islam, and so on. On all the sides of that pillar, on the panels of the pillar, there are great sayings taken from all these religions.
The lotus blossom pillar represents Baba's vision of the various religions. They are all roads which lead to the same God. There will be only one religion, the religion of love, and only one language, that of the heart, and only one caste, humanity.
There is only one God. He is omnipresent. There is only one God.
Names and forms difference.
Names and forms may be different.
కనుక మనం ఏ డిఫరెన్స్ కూడా పెట్టుకోకుండా ఏ విధమైన వ్యత్యాసములు పెట్టుకోకుండా ప్రేమ చేత అందరినీ కూడా కట్టుకట్టుకోవాలి.
Without promoting any difference, without promoting any different thought, we should with love bind all of us together into one.
And about Jesus Christ, well, his very idea of the cross, the crucifixion, is something interesting. You see, he says you cross the eye, and that is the crucifixion. You must destroy the ego. And if you cross the eye, strike off I myself, this idea of I-ness, then what is left is divine. And Christ was that. He had that divinity in him. He was in fact one of the great avatars of our time, in our words.
Don Mario Mazzoleni, priest, attached to the Diocese of Rome, studied at the Alfonsiana Academy in Rome, graduated in moral theology.
Il primo incontro con Baba è stato attraverso alcune letture. Ho letto alcuni libri che ho trovato estremamente.
My first contact with Sai Baba was through literature. I read certain books which I found very interesting, I might even say a little over-imaginative. And that was where my doubts began. All the miracles which Sai Baba produces could just as well be the expression of a malignant being. I thought perhaps of the Antichrist.
Rimasi con un ultimo dubbio. Tutti i prodigi che Sai Baba compie potevano essere forse l'espressione anche di un essere maligno. Pensavo forse l'Anticristo. Un unico modo c'era per risolvere questo dubbio.
There was only one way to find out. I would have to read his own writings and speeches. And so I bought everything I could find on the market and discovered, to my surprise, and I might say with a deep shock, that he could not possibly be the Antichrist, because the things he said were too similar, too much in harmony with the Holy Scriptures, the New Testament included.
And so you went to India and you went to Sai Baba?
Yes, the moment when I physically met Sai Baba, the moment in which I could speak to him, was when he opened new spheres of knowledge to me. It's as if a series of openings have taken place onto a field of which I knew nothing. Everything which had seemed so mysterious in my own religion became clearer. And I felt a new enthusiasm within me, a new road which was my vocation as a priest.
The pleasure is an interval between two pains. It is between two pains we will experience. If there is no pain, we will never experience pleasure.
Jesus అనేక కష్టములకు గురి కావటం చేతనే నేడు అతని యొక్క కీర్తి అతని యొక్క పవిత్రమైనటువంటి యొక్క నామము జగత్ వ్యాప్తిగా జోజీర్యమానంగా వెలుస్తున్నాడు.
Jesus, because he submitted himself to different types of pain, today his reputation is so broadly known and he is known so well in the world. Not only Jesus.
ఈనాడు ప్రపంచంలో సర్వమతముల యొక్క ప్రబోధకులు కూడాను, ప్రచారకులు కూడాను, సద్బోధకులు కూడాను ఈ విధమైనటువంటి కష్టములకు, నష్టములకు, దుఃఖములకు, నిందలకు, నిష్ఠూరములకు గురి కావటం చేతనే వారు ఈనాడు శాశ్వతమైనటువంటి యొక్క కీర్తిని అందుకోగలుగుతున్నారు.
Not only Jesus, all leaders and promoters of all religions in this world have met with such obstacles. Because of that pain to which they were submitted, they are remembered today at this distant time in the world.
విలువైన జాతి వజ్రమునైనా కూడాను కోతలు కోసినప్పుడే దానికి సరి అయినటువంటి యొక్క వేళ.
Even a valuable diamond, only when you cut the diamond it becomes valuable.
ఇది ఎక్కడ ఉండినా కానీ దీని విలువ మారదు.
Wherever it may be, its value will not change.
పెద్ద వజ్రమొకటి పెంటలో దొరికిన విలువ మారదు, దాని వెలుగుబోదు.
In the big auditorium during the week of Christmas, Christian children put on the nativity play. At the end of the play, Baba comes on stage. In the morning at 5 o'clock, with the first chanting of the Om, while it's still dark there far away in the east, devoted Christians gather and go around the ashrams singing Christmas carols in an unbelievable, fantastic procession, lit by the light of thousands of candles. Sai Baba's eclecticism attracts Christians from all over the world. Americans, Australians, English, Canadians, French, Italians, Swedes, Germans, Spanish, Portuguese, and then people from Africa, from South America, from Japan, from China, from Korea. Every year they come more and more to experience this extraordinary, intense, and palpable atmosphere. This is how Christmas should be celebrated, says Baba, praying and singing, without wild running around after presents, food, and the race to consume. He's there, on the balcony. He watches, smiles, waves.
Sai Baba,
Sri Satya Sai Baba, which means Lord, Truth, Mother and Father, is considered an avatar in Indian culture. An avatar is a divine incarnation. God descended to earth in human form then. For us Westerners, and for us Catholics especially, who have been brought up to have many prejudices, I might even say we have been educated for prejudice, it is difficult to believe that God would choose to come down to earth in new forms, in modern times, and show himself at new moments with new motives, or even with the same motive, to save humankind. Because for the Catholic especially, there is only one divine incarnation, that of Jesus Christ. But who can possibly limit the infinite and prevent God from coming down to earth when, where, and how he desires?
Who is Sai Baba? Well, that answer, not to dismiss the question, but to really answer is overpowering and shattering. How can we say with words? You see, to really experience who Sai Baba is, one's feet start to tremble and one falls down in devotion. It's too easy to say that you see him as God, that as the Hindus say he's Brahma, Vishnu, or Shiva, or that Christians might say he's Christ, or a Jew might say he's the Messiah. It's too easy and glib to say this with words. To really experience Baba, who is Baba? When he comes out at you, your instinct is to fall to the ground and to be exhilarated and excited and full of love by who he is. And there's no way of explaining this in words. It's an experience that is so high, it's beyond what the mind can grasp. When I see myself reacting like this, I used to think, well, is this a hysterical reaction? Am I hypnotized? Am I going through some strange psychological phenomena? But no, there's a way of experiencing reality deeper than what we experience with the mind. The awe and grandeur of the universe, the sense of God's infinite love and sweetness, his greatness. And how can we say this in words? The only way of saying this is in silence, maybe with tears, and to drop to one's knees. This is what Baba means to me, that I experience this part of reality through him.
Oh, that is a million-dollar question, as the Americans would call it. Many have asked this question before. I have asked the question myself. And as a result of my long contact with him, extending over 20 years, and as a result of very close and critical examination of all that he does, all that he did to me and to others, I have come to the conclusion, in accordance with the Indian tradition, that God, who normally is unseen and unmanifested, although omnipresent, can occasionally take the decision to appear in human form amongst the people, as we had such examples in Rama and Krishna of Indian mythology and of Jesus Christ of Western incidents. We have here in Baba God appearing in human form, talking to us, moving amongst us and helping us and healing us and showing his infinite love and compassion to the entire human sect without any reference to caste, creed or color and one thing and another.
I see him, the great poet, the poet of poets, in his sublimity, in the serenity, in his compassion, in his power, in his wisdom, and in his presence in every living thing, his love. So he is the prompter of poetry in every poet. He is the rhyme, he is the charm, he is the harmony, the melody, the ultimate source of all this. That is how I feel it. When I see him, I see a poem, a sublime poem. When he speaks, I listen to the music of the spheres.
Father Anthony Elanjimatam, Dominican monk, student and colleague of Mahatma Gandhi, research author, consultant, an eminent expert on both cultures, the Western and the Eastern, runs 2 schools in Bombay, the St. Catherine of Stena and the Aquinas, both of which are schools for outcast children. Papa Luciani, the great expert on Indian spirituality, encouraged him in his ecumenical mission.
For me, Baba is a teacher on the same level as Christ, Buddha, and all the other teachers of the past who teach humanity to serve God as human beings, as sons of God, as gods under other forms. And so, by putting into practice his teachings, you will understand who Sai Baba really is, instead of formulating theories about whether he is the supreme incarnation, which does not interest me at all. It is the same with the teachings of Christ. I'm not interested in dogmatization, but in the putting into practice Christ's Sermon on the Mount and his other teachings. If by doing this I can change my life, my attitude changes. In fact, every cell in my body is in a state of transformation, is undergoing a constant metamorphosis.
So Baba, excuse the interruption, has an important function in the present moment of history?
A mission, certainly. At this time, with this new awareness which has been woken all over the world, Sai Baba has a very important role. Because, for instance, Swami Vivekananda is a great teacher of the, well, not of the last century, because he died in 1902. Ramakrishna is also a great teacher, as well as Ramana Maharshi, Sri Aurobindo, and so on. In India, we have an entire universe of such great teachers of the past.
Una posizione unicità, in questo senso che pur inquadrando l'insegnamento di questi grandi maestri del passato,
he teaches us a new direction through which we can overcome the abyss between East and West, between the Semitic religions and the Indo-Aryan ones. So he teaches us a Catholicism, a cosmic ecumenism, so to speak. This is his message.
Sri Bhagavan Satya Sai Babaya Namaha. Om Sri Sai Satya Sarupaya Namaha. Om Sri Sai Satya Dharma Parayanaya Namaha. Om Sri Sai Varadaya Namaha. Om Sri Sai Satpurushaya Namaha. Om Sri Sai Satya Gunatmani Namaha. Om Sri Sai